Hello and welcome back to Silver Age Silver Screen, the show where we watch movies and we review them. It isn't just adaptation, it's complicated. I'm one of your hosts, Casey Jarms. We need to rewrite the intro.
And I'm your other co-host, Riley Thorpe.
Yeah, and when this episode's gonna come out, we're recording this on November 2nd as we sit in horror of the absolute shit show that the next couple days will be, or were, from your perspective. And oh god, I'm going to have to listen back to this as I edit the video after everything's happened. But when this episode's gonna come out, it should be mid-November, and I'm pretty sure it'll be like 9 days before Thanksgiving or something like that. You know, there's a really nice thing in the US about holidays where ABC, or I guess it's called Freeform now for some reason, ABC Family just plays the Harry Potter movies on the loop and made them this weird holiday tradition that plays at Thanksgiving and every holiday. But Thanksgiving's the one that you think of, because who watches them on Christmas?
Exactly.
We're doing first Harry Potter movie.
Yep.
We didn't discuss this before the show. Have you ever read the Harry Potter books?
Yes, I've read all of them. I was a kid when I did, but I do remember a fair bit from them. I'm a big fan of the franchise and love the movies, love the books, and it was really interesting going back and reliving this experience and rewatching this movie.
I also read the Harry Potter books as a kid a few times, actually. Have not read them in years. I was raised on these movies. I love them. I watch them with my family every year. Although, like you said, it is weird going back to them for the purpose of doing review, because it's active, critical watching and thinking about, okay, does that work? Does that fail? Because, honestly, I've seen these movies so many times that they're just like background noise often.
You know, it's challenging to go back and look at something that's so nostalgic without those rose-tinted glasses.
Oh god, it is so hard, like, does this scene work? Da-da-da-da-da. Yep, it works. This movie's a masterpiece.
Yeah.
The nostalgia for this movie. But we're going to try and be objective.
Yeah, we're going to be as objective as possible in this movie review, as well as, just to clarify, we're not judging this as an adaptation of the book. We're not judging it as a film based on a book, we're judging it as a film. We may call back a little bit here and there, but we're not judging it based on the fact that, oh, in the books this happened and this in the movie this happened. We're keeping it separate.
And can I be honest?
Yeah.
The Harry Potter fanbase has so many problems.
Every fandom does.
One of the more annoying things is just the other. Actually, this was slightly different in the book, and because of that, the movie is bad.
Yeah.
Harry Potter fanbase is kind of annoying to the movies. Like, there are a few specific changes, none in this one, but, like, for instance, the mirror thing in the fifth one. But there are a few specific changes that I don't like, but the Harry Potter fanbase can be annoying.
Oh, yeah.
When it comes to just hating the movies for not being 100% accurate adaptations. When, honestly, I would argue that some of the more entertaining parts of the movies are in the 7th and 8th, when they actually try to be their own thing and not just direct adaptations. But that's way down the road.
Right, exactly. If you don't like the movies, then guess what? Your John Williams score, that's gone. Your iconic production design, all that, that's all gone. So I don't know where I was going with this. But the point is, there's a lot to love about both, and we're just going to be reviewing the movie. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone.
Wait, hold on. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone? That's not what this movie's called. It's Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone.
Yeah. There's a bit of a discrepancy as to what exactly the title of this is. Here in the United States, we call it the Sorcerer's Stone. However, in Europe and England, it is called the Philosopher's Stone.
Yeah, and Sorcerer's Stone, it flows better. I like that alliteration. But it is kind of insulting that they needed to change the name of the thing for American audiences because, oh, they aren't gonna know what the Philosopher's Stone is. But, dude, you're a movie about a school for magic. You can teach things about magic. Like, the Philosopher's Stone, that's a thing.
Right. I also think it's worth noting that the Philosopher's Stone is created by Nicolas Flamel. And Nicolas Flamel was actually a real French philosopher. He was a real man. And I think that they were under the impression that to American audiences, they wouldn't understand this real man in this fantasy film, and I don't know. They just figured people would confuse.
Here's what I'm gonna say. Full Metal Alchemist, which honestly, better thing than Harry Potter in almost every way, but that's a story
Okay.
for another day. Full Metal Alchemist calls it a Philosopher's Stone, and I never questioned that because it explains, oh, this is what the Philosopher's Stone is. But we're getting off track. Let's get into the review. Although, one more thing before we get into it. J.K. Rowling is a giant asshole,
Yeah.
and there's a lot we can say about her personal life and her more recent works, but that's not what this review is. We're talking about the film directed by Chris Columbus, starring Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, Emma Watson, and Alan Rickman.
We understand that there's been a lot of controversy surrounding J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, she sucks, but she didn't make this movie. Chris Columbus did.
Right, we're not here to comment on that. We're not here to comment on her books. We're not here to comment on any of that. We're just reviewing this movie as it is.
Let's get into it.
So the film opens up with the Warner Brothers logo, and immediately it kicks in the iconic John Williams score. The theme for this movie, right out the gate, is outstanding. It's iconic, it's mysterious, it's magical, it's fun. John Williams did a great job with this score.
Yeah, he was nominated for an Oscar for it. Well deserved. The score is just so good, and it immediately brings us back to our childhood. And again, try to be objective, but oh god, that nostalgia when that da-da-na-na-na-na-na hits. Also, it's technically called Hedwig's theme, fun fact.
Oh, cool. The film opens up on a dark street in England on Pivot Drive. A man dressed in a wizard's cloak and a long beard named Dumbledore, who we will get to know a lot more as the series progresses, he walks through the streets and he takes out all the light from the streetlights with this machine. As he walks down the street, he meets a cat, which transforms into one of his friends / co-workers, Professor McGonagall, played by Maggie Smith. And Dumbledore, by the way, is played by Richard Harris.
Yeah.
Incredible actor, father of Jared Harris, another iconic great actor. The two discuss how this man named Hagrid is going to be bringing a child to the street, and they're going to be leaving him on the doorstep of his only remaining family, his aunt and uncle. Hagrid shows up on a magical flying motorcycle carrying a little child under his arm.
With a lightning bolt scar on his forehead.
Now they leave him on his doorstep under the pretenses of he, as an infant, did something that no other human being or magical being could ever do, and that it is good for him to grow up away from the wizarding world, away from all the fame that he's going to get, and it's good for him to live the first 11 years of his life not knowing that magical world, not knowing what had happened to him, living with these quote-unquote muggles, these non-magical people. And they leave him on a doorstep with a letter, and cut to the title, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone.
Well, first off, just opening scene does a great job setting up the, sort of mysterious, this is a movie about magic in the modern day and this different society of wizards. It's a really good intro scene.
Yeah.
And then immediately after that, cuts to when Harry is 10 with his horribly abusive life with his aunt and uncle.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And his cousin.
Oh god, yeah. Dudley's arguably the worst.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I gotta say, it would be horrible in real life, but it's a really weird thing to phrase. But I love how horrible the Dursleys are to Harry.
Yeah.
It's just so cartoonishly over the top.
Oh,
and
yeah.
props to the actors. They do an amazing job making you despise them.
Oh, yeah,
just
absolutely.
Dudley goes down, sees 30 presents, and says, "Last year there was 32!" Or whatever the number was. That. Ooh. Oh god, they're so horrible.
That was one thing that struck me upon rewatching it. I was like, their hatred towards him is very cartoonish. But that said, it does fit with the tone. They are very, very bad to him.
I feel like the cartoonishness helps it from being completely horrible.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I'm treating this movie a lot lighter than I probably will the other films in this series because it's lighthearted and made for kids.
Right.
Harry Potter hot take number 1, and these are not original hot takes. Dumbledore sure did leave Harry in an abusive household for 10 years.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh, it's kind of horrible, but again, the cartoonishness and the sheer ridiculousness of it keep it from turning the audience off. And we can discuss maybe the implications of that. But for now, Harry's 10 years old. He lives in a cupboard under the stairs with his horrible, horrible non-magical family.
Then one day on his cousin's birthday, they take a trip to the zoo where Harry magically makes the glass in front of a boa constrictor, a python, a giant snake. The glass disappears because of his doing. The snake escapes, says thank you to him, and slithers off.
And also Dudley gets trapped in the snake pit, which is good. He had it coming.
Pretty soon after that, Harry starts receiving letters sent by owls. He doesn't know what these letters are, though his aunt and uncle seem to know exactly what they are, and they're keeping it from him. And eventually they receive so many letters that they decide to move far away to a lighthouse in the middle of nowhere so they won't be found. And on his 11th birthday, Harry's lying on the ground in the dirt, wishing himself a happy birthday, and then suddenly there's a giant bang at the door.
And Hagrid, this giant, hairy man from the beginning, walks in. And also, side note, you know what's a really weird thing about this movie that I never noticed?
What?
The scene, it's a really classic, really sad scene of Harry lying on the ground all alone and drawing a birthday cake for himself in the dust. And, like, Dudley's watch, like, beep, 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 it, like, goes off at midnight and, oh, it's officially Harry's birthday and he's all alone.
Yeah.
Why the hell did Dudley have a watch set for midnight? And why didn't it wake him?
I don't know.
That's such a weird thing. Also, another thing about, like, Hagrid showing up and, like, you're a wizard, Harry. I'm going to take you off to a magic world and take you away from your abusive family, which is what happens in the scene. You know what's another weird thing about that scene?
What's that?
Vernon Dursley straight up tried to murder Hagrid.
Right, yeah.
He pulled out a shotgun and fired it at the man. And Hagrid, like, because he's big old giant dude, bent the barrel and it shot the ceiling, but Vernon Dursley tried to kill a man.
There's a number of giant bangs at the door until the door is knocked down and in walks a giant man. Hagrid from the beginning of the scene, the man that brought Harry on his giant motorcycle. And one thing I'd like to say, Robbie Coltrane is great as Hagrid.
I like Maggie Smith and Alan Rickman in later films where they get more presence, but really, Hagrid's the teacher that gets the most focus in this movie, and he steals the show. Hagrid is just great. This kind, bit dim, friendly man who takes Harry to Hogwarts. Hagrid's great.
And that was one thing that, looking back, it's really remarkable, the casting of this entire series. Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, Rupert Grint.
The child actors, they aren't that great in this one, to be honest. They're a bit wooden, but they did end up being, by the end of the series, really good actors. Great investment, and beyond that, the cast is just great.
Yeah, Richard Harris as Dumbledore, Maggie Smith as Professor McGonagall, Alan Rickman as Professor Snape. Good God, is he amazing.
We will get to him, but God, Snape, we'll get to him. But yeah, Hagrid's great.
Robbie Coltrane, all the kids. I did think they gave good performances. I will say, I did think Daniel Radcliffe was the weakest in this film, though. Now, that said, he has the most screen time, and again, it's hard to give a good performance as a child, but there are a few times where he's like looking off screen, and he's got just a blank expression on his face. There were times I'm like, yeah, he's a kid. He's not the greatest actor, but I did think Emma Watson was really solid, and so was Rupert Grint. All the child actors, for the most part, I did think gave decent, maybe not great, but decent performances. I did think Daniel Radcliffe was the weakest. That said, no disrespect to the man whatsoever. As the series progressed, they all got so much better.
They did. And you know who I think is probably the best child actor in this?
Who?
Tom Felton is just great because, oh god, like the Dursleys, a thing the Harry Potter series is good at is just making you hate people. And Malfoy, oh boy, we'll get to him. So anyway,
Hagrid bursts through the door. He tells the Dursleys to screw off and tells Harry the iconic line, "You're a wizard, Harry," and teaches him about this magical world, that how he's a wizard, the son of these incredibly famous wizards that passed away because of some unknown reason, at least unknown at the time, and he gives Dudley a pigtail, like legitimately a pig tail on his butt.
Yeah.
And yeah, and
I mean, I think Dudley could pull off the hairdo.
oh yeah, absolutely. Hagrid takes Harry and they go to this bar where they meet a bunch of people who know who Harry Potter is miraculously. They're shaking his hand, they're in awe.
He's the most famous wizard in the world, and he's 11-year-old and hasn't been part of Wizard Society since he was an infant. And Harry Potter hot take number 2. There's gonna be a lot of these. The whole boy who lived and most famous wizard of his age thing, that's kinda dumb.
Yeah, a little bit.
Like, the thing is, spoilers for... Wait, why am I saying spoilers? We don't care about spoilers on this show. Snape murders Dumbledore. Harry's the final Horcrux. Luke is Vader's son. Whatever. But anyway, it's really weird. The whole Harry Potter is famous hero because he killed Lord Voldemort. I don't think that would happen in real life. If a serial killer broke into a family's home and killed the parents, and then when people came in, they just saw his body lying in front of the infant, they wouldn't think that the infant killed him and is now a hero.
No, but you gotta keep in mind, this is a movie intended for children and families, so you gotta give a little leniency here and there. In the bar, Harry meets Professor Quirrell, this man, very shy, stuttering man who's going to be one of his professors in this next year. And he shakes his hand, Quirrell won't because we assume he's shy, and that's the end of that. Right after that, Hagrid takes Harry to the back of the bar where there's a giant brick wall. He pulls out his wand/umbrella, taps a few bricks, and the brick walls move to reveal a street corner called Diagon Alley.
And it's just filled with all these wizards and these shops selling like cauldrons and broomsticks and owls. And I will say, that is one of the reasons that this movie impacted children so much. Like, I don't mean to assign popularity as a synonym for quality, but when something is this popular, it's best to look at it and analyze, okay, why is this so popular? Why did this resonate so well with so many people? And part of the reason is the visual design and the creativity of the world. Like, the world of Harry Potter, and we can discuss all the world building problems that are kind of dumb, but it feels alive. It feels interesting and different from the real world while still being something that could be a part of it. And that's one of this film's greatest strengths.
Absolutely. The production design, the music, the tone, the world they've set up is so well fleshed out and so fun and creative and beautiful. And another thing that really works, not just in this movie, but for this entire series, this entire franchise, the reason why it resonates so well is because of Harry Potter as its protagonist. The thing that we got to keep in mind is Harry did not grow up in this world. We're seeing what he's seeing. The audience and Harry Potter himself are experiencing these things for the very first time. So when the camera is panning through Diagon Alley, showing you all this magic and wizards and witches and wands and all this stuff, we're amazed at that because we've never seen that before, and it's beautiful and incredible. That's exactly what Harry Potter is thinking, because he's foreign to this world, just like us. So the reason why he's so relatable is because he's just like us, and he's having those exact same feelings that we are, and he's displaying those on camera. That's why he is such a relatable character. That's why this franchise is so resonant with people. Harry Potter is, by definition, a very good, arguably great protagonist, especially when it comes to relatability.
So anyway, in Diagon Alley, Hagrid takes Harry around, going to various places, getting his things to be a wizard. They stop at a bank, which is run by inhuman, hook-nosed, greedy people. Just gonna gloss over that.
Goblins. Look, they're goblins.
Harry goes to a wand shop and gets this magic wand. And there's this great scene of just like the light shining on him and wind blowing as his wand chooses him. And also he gets the first foreshadowing in the series that he's linked to the series' main villain, the guy who killed his parents, Voldemort, because he has the same type of wand as Voldemort. But anyway, Harry gets all his stuff, then he goes to King's Cross Station, goes through platform 9 3/4, which is a secret train platform you get through by walking through a wall, because wizards overcomplicate anything. and he gets on a train going to Hogwarts.
Yeah, and one thing that was really crazy for me to look up, or for me to realize, especially in Diagon Alley in particular, there's a lot of really interesting cameos from very famous actors. Mostly in Diagon Alley, but even later on in the film, at least one in particular. Warwick Davis, who played R2-D2 in the Star Wars films, he plays one of the goblins in the bank.
Speaking of famous actors, I never realized it as a kid until, I looked up this movie's cast in prep for this review. Ollivander, the guy who sells Harry his wand, that is John Hurt. Or Sir John Hurt.
That's another one of those cameos.
A whole bunch of things.
He is such an iconic British actor, and he unfortunately has since passed away. But I was watching that, I was like, that's John Hurt right there.
And you know what's the biggest cameo thing? A cameo that got fourth billing, despite the character being in one scene. John Cleese plays nearly headless Nick, and got fourth billing for that.
John Cleese from the Monty Python fame makes a cameo in Hogwarts, makes a couple appearances throughout the film as one of the ghost that represents Gryffindor. Another famous cameo is Vern Troyer. He also plays one of the goblins. He played Mini-Me in the Austin Powers movies. It's at the bank that Harry gets all of his money that his parents left him, and it's also at that same bank that Hagrid picks up a mysterious package that he can't tell Harry about. All he tells him is for Professor Dumbledore. I will say, this film does have very, very on-the-nose foreshadowing and exposition, and I do think that's probably the biggest flaw of this movie is it doesn't always feel like it's its own movie. It feels like it's the setup movie for the rest of the franchise, you know? And just there's a lot of exposition, a lot of talking, a lot of foreshadowing, a lot of stuff that's like, don't worry, this is all going to pay off later on. And it does, but still, you do got to focus on making this one movie the best you possibly can. I mean, if we can learn anything from Fan Four Stick, that's what we can learn.
And honestly, it isn't just that it has a lot of setup for other movies. The setup for the later movies in the series is actually kind of subtle. This film, and really Harry Potter films in general, each one is kind of presented as a mystery that Harry, Ron, and Hermione are figuring out. They're trying to figure out what's going on at Hogwarts and what's with the Sorcerer's Stone and the break-in. And as a kid, it felt like a really good mystery, and piecing it all together, looking back on it, it's a very, very obvious mystery.
Right.
Because every single clue that you get is just part of it. It's like you get piece of it, piece of it, piece of it, and you're very obviously told this is important. Like, here's a mysterious package. Is it important? Who knows?
That is probably the biggest flaw of this movie, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, it's very on the nose at points. But anyway, Harry gets all his wizard stuff, goes on a train to take him to Hogwarts, because this film is very inconsistent on how medieval wizard society is, but that's fine. It's part of its charm. And on this train, he meets up with the film's other two protagonists, who will be his sidekicks for the rest of his life. Ron Weasley, who's this really nice, really loyal, a bit mischievous young guy from a big family who's kind of got a chip on his shoulder because all of his big brothers are amazing. And also Hermione Granger, who is a nerd! She's such a nerd. But no, Hermione's great. And like, the brains of the operation. Hey, another Harry Potter hot take real quick. I have a whole list of these, by the way. And okay. I'm gonna try and not get all my hot takes out, because I have so many for the series. Like, we aren't even getting into the fact that wizards have slaves in later movies, but
yeah,
the candy in the Harry Potter universe sucks.
Yeah.
Like, there's a scene where Harry buys a bunch of wizard candy, and all of it is awful. There's, chocolate frogs, which are living
alive.
Frogs made out of... Yeah, I don't want to eat that. I don't want a frog jumping around my throat. And
but the thing you gotta keep in mind is that it's not the chocolate frog you want. It's the card inside, Casey. It's the card inside that matters.
Okay, then explain the jelly beans to me. Explain why they have every flavored jelly bean. And I mean, I know that kind of exists in real life with the, ooh, is this going to be black licorice or cherry? But no, it's every flavor. We're explicitly shown that there are vomit and earwax flavored jelly beans. Who would eat those? Like, ooh, bag of jelly beans. that was abortion flavored. I think I'm gonna go die now.
Yeah, funny thing about that candy is a number of years ago, my family took a trip to Universal Studios and we went to the Harry Potter world. It was a lot of fun, had a great time. There is that candy store, I forget the name of it, but they actually have a candy store with that name, and my family went there and we got a huge bag of candy. They got a bunch of like dispensers and stuff, and at one point, one of them we filled up. We had a lot of this one candy called Crybabies, and they are like little hard candies that when you bite into, they're really, really sour. My entire family hated those Crybabies, except for me, which means I had an entire bag. We filled it up with a lot. Like, those Crybabies were like a third, maybe even half the bag. I had half a bag of Harry Potter candy to myself, and I fucking ate that shit all day. It was so good. But that's just a little personal tangent, so continue.
Train arrives at Hogwarts, and we see this massive, imposing wizard castle, and they walk into the Great Hall, which has floating candles and a magic ceiling that shows the night sky. Harry meets Draco Malfoy. He's like a school bully, and he is just the worst. Props to Tom Felton.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And anyway, the students find out that they are sorted into houses based on... They don't actually say what they're based on in this movie, I realize, which is surprising.
Yeah.
But there's Gryffindor for the brave and loyal ones, Hufflepuff for the hard-working and friendly ones, Ravenclaw for the smart and curious ones, and Slytherin for the Nazis.
Yeah, that's the other thing, too. Why the hell would you have an entire section of your students at a school where their purpose is they're going to go evil? Why is that a thing?
I mean... In theory, and this is one of the bigger problems with Harry Potter series, in theory, Slytherins are cunning and ambitious.
Right.
And honestly, I don't think those traits are necessarily evil.
No, not at all.
But every Slytherin in the series is evil. Even ones who aren't cunning and ambitious, like Crabbe and Goyle, which is strange.
Yeah.
And but what about characters like R.E.B. who, no, characters who join up with the wizard Nazis and then quit the wizard Nazis don't count as good guys. The only good example is maybe Slughorn, but
yes.
He's a cowardly asshole. And in The Cursed Child, which finally gives good Slytherins, but also it's the Cursed Child. Ugh.
Yeah. Another thing, Hogwarts Castle is really, really well designed. It's really beautiful to look at. It's a really cool, magical place. That said, this place needs to be shut down.
Oh god, it is a death trap!
The stairs literally move on their own.
Why?
And will take kids to dangerous corridors with giant death traps and...
There's a murder forest that students can walk to. The lake in later movies, has mermaids that try and kill you. They have a dungeon with trolls in it. There's another dungeon with a basilisk. I don't get why in the fourth book everyone's so upset about Cedric dying and they have this big funeral. Considering how Hogwarts is run, they must have like 16 students die every year.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Hogwarts would be shut
down. Oh, God, and we haven't even talked about the death trap that is Quidditch.
Oh, my God.
Later.
Later.
They go through the sorting ceremony. Ron and Hermione are sorted into Gryffindor, which is the good house.
Mm-hmm.
And Harry is almost sorted into Slytherin, but he whispers, "Not Slytherin, don't make me in the evil house," and he gets put in Gryffindor, which isn't super important for this one, but it ended up becoming a really important thing later in the series, and that's a good setup.
Yeah, that really worked.
But anyway, now Harry's at Hogwarts. The film becomes less... I don't want to say less linear, but it becomes more slice of life.
Right.
As we just see a series of scenes of Harry at Hogwarts enjoying his life, learning to be a wizard, trying to figure out what's going on at Hogwarts.
And at the Sorting Hat ceremony, he gets his first glimpse of Professor Severus Snape. When he sees him, they lock eyes, and Harry's scar starts to burn. So setting up potentially that this man is dangerous, this man is trouble, and something's not right with him.
And I think we get him with McGonagall first, but we get a scene with Harry in Snape's class, and Snape is, oh god, Snape is the worst in the best way. Alan Rickman steals every scene he's in.
Oh, yeah,
His
absolutely.
character is just so enchantingly over the top. His voice, his demeanor, every line. God, Snape is amazing. I mean, not amazing a good person. Snape's an asshole, but he steals the show in this movie.
Absolutely. Alan Rickman did such a great job. Rest in peace. He was a
Right,
great
he's dead.
actor. And Daniel Radcliffe actually said that working with Alan Rickman was a very foundational part of his childhood and his life because, according to Daniel Radcliffe, Alan Rickman was the first person to not treat him like a kid, rather treat him like a colleague, a co-star, like he's a professional worker. And, he's still 11, but still, it's very interesting. He was a good guy.
And it doesn't really happen this much in later films, but that is fitting. Harry and Snape have some great interactions, especially in 6, but God, Snape is just amazing. Students out after bed. You'd better be careful, or else people might think you're up to something. God, Snape's so quotable. And something I've seen people discuss about this film, it does a really good job introducing school life. And I know that's a weird thing to praise a film on, but it is particularly effective. At the start, we get scenes with all of his teachers that establish, okay, this is how it's gonna go. And then you can assume that's going on throughout the whole series because it's been established. And you don't have to. And Harry went to potions, and Harry went to transmutation, and Harry went to Quidditch, and then this happened. It's an effective storytelling thing.
We're shown a lot of scenes in which we see the children learning special skills that do come into play later on. One particular scene with the Quidditch where they're learning how to fly broomsticks, sort of like a physical education class type thing.
Yeah, except for way more dangerous than any phys ed class. Like, the very first Quidditch lesson, 5 minutes into it, a kid breaks his wrist. Hogwarts is a death trap.
It's a miracle he only broke his wrist. But, I will say, up until that point when they start flying, I thought the CGI, for the most part, was really solid for a 19-year-old movie. I thought it worked. I thought it was really well done. It was when the flying lesson started and they started introducing full-body human CGI, that's when it started showing his age. And then it was a little spotty for me.
And you know what the ironic thing is? I looked up some other people's reviews for this. I already have my score ironed out, but
yeah.
I looked up other people's reviews. You know what was the most praised thing about this film and the most divisive thing?
What's that?
The most praised thing was the special effects.
Okay.
And the most divisive thing was, a lot of people liked it and it was nominated for an Oscar, but some major critics really hated this film's soundtrack.
Really?
Which I'm surprised to hear.
Yeah.
But anyway, Harry learns to fly on a broom, and Draco Malfoy does some bullying stuff to Neville, who's not really much of a character in this one.
No.
He becomes more important later. And Harry shows off his broom skills to get back a thing that Malfoy stole from Neville. And because he's good at brooms, he is introduced to the sport of Quidditch, which is the main wizard sport, where they fly around on broomsticks and throw balls and hoops. And it is the worst sport ever invented.
Yeah, absolutely.
Quidditch sucks.
There's a scene later on where they're actually in a Quidditch match, and the captain of the Slytherin team actively causes really serious injuries to the other team's players. Like, he hits the other captain, the keeper, who's like the goaltender essentially, hits him with a cannonball essentially. And he falls like 40 feet straight onto sand.
How is he not dead?
And then immediately after that, 2 other players drive one of the other members, this girl, into the stands, which are just giant planks of wood that she just falls and no doubt hits her head and cracks her neck in a few places.
No one in Hogwarts cares about safety. And you know what's the most damning piece of no one in this movie cares about children's safety? Someone tries to murder Harry in the middle of Quidditch.
Yeah.
They cast magic on him to make his broom freak out. And, the teachers don't care. One teacher, eventually revealed to be Snape, does something to save him. But, Oh, look, someone's trying to murder Harry Potter with magic. Oh, well, let's enjoy this game.
Absolutely. And it's at the time that when they see Harry's broom going on the fritz, Ron and Hermione from the stands use a telescope to see Snape staring at Harry casting a spell. So they think that he's the one causing it. So Hermione sneaks out, goes to where Snape is, and lights his cloak on fire. That distracts Snape, and the broom gets stabilized. Harry gets back onto his broom, and he catches the snitch and wins the game for everybody.
Oh, we didn't mention the golden snitch. Quidditch, it would kill children.
Oh, yeah.
It's a sport designed to kill children. But Quidditch is a very, very dumb game from, like, a game theory standpoint. There's one ball that is worth 150 points, and when you get it, the game ends. All the other balls are 10 points. And there's only one player on each team that goes after the 150-point ball. It's such a bad sport.
Yeah, and the thing that the book does go into, and this isn't commenting on the movie, but the book does go into, the game doesn't stop until the snitch is caught. In the books, they mention how Quidditch games have gone on for weeks.
This is such a bad sport. It's a sport where only two people are important.
But the points do go to the houses, so you want to score as many points as possible.
That is a thing we haven't touched upon. Throughout the movie, there's like a house cup competition where all the students are competing to make their house win, and never appears again in the books, I don't think. It's only in this one, which is weird, because it's a big part of this one.
The Quidditch match was pretty entertaining, pretty thrilling, but I will say, again, that's when the green screen starts to show its age, and it does look a little fake, but it was very entertaining.
Yeah, but seriously, Quidditch sucks. Like, you're wizards, and you have a sport where you can't use magic, you just fly on broomsticks. Like, let you shoot spells at each other. Get rid of this. I have a lot of thoughts on why Quidditch is a bad game.
Yeah.
And I will, in this essay, whatever.
Yeah, I think we've talked a lot about that.
Quidditch is when the CG shows its age. And, I mean, that's fair, but I don't think that's where the CG is the most noticeable.
Oh, no.
I think it's most noticeable with the giant monsters.
Yes.
Which Hogwarts just has.
Yeah, pretty soon after the Quidditch match, Harry and Ron are eating dinner, and Hermione is off crying in the bathroom because Ron said something that upset her. And at that point, Professor Quirrell runs into the dining hall screaming about there's a troll loose in the school.
No. Riley, what the hell, man? It's the meme line. You gotta say it right. It's troll in the dungeon!
I thought you ought to know. And he passes out. Dumbledore orders the heads of the houses, the prefects, as they're called, to take the kids back to their dorms where the teachers will go and take care of it. But Ron and Harry realize that Hermione doesn't know, so they have to go rescue her. But just before they get there, conveniently, the troll has got out of the dungeon and walks into the girls' bathroom, where a crying 11-year-old girl is lying there waiting without knowing what's about to happen.
They fight the troll and take it out with the limited magic they have. They, like, levitate its club and drop it on its head. And another reason why Hogwarts would have so many deaths, all the students, or at the very least the students the movie focus on, they really don't care about their own personal safety. Like,
oh, no, not at all.
Just tell a teacher, man!
Conveniently, the teachers arrive right after the troll is defeated.
And we may be getting some events out of order. Like we said, the film becomes less organized in the middle. And that's not a bad thing, but there are a lot of things that happen.
Because it has to span an entire school year. It spans holidays, different classes, all that.
Also, around the same time, they find that there's a Cerberus just behind a door on the 3rd floor, guarding a trap door. Again, death trap.
Dumbledore specifically told every single student, do not go on the left side on the 3rd floor corridor. He said, do not go there. Everybody would be going there. Like, woo, what's behind that door? A giant 3-headed dog is there. That's what. His name is Fluffy.
Yeah, and he also, another one of his warnings is, any student who goes into the Forbidden Forest will reach certain death.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Oh, God.
The Forbidden Forest isn't even fenced off. It's just there.
No. And later, they send students in it for detention.
Yeah.
But anyway, more things that happen at Christmas. Harry gets a cloak of invisibility from a mysterious person. Did they ever say in this movie that Dumbledore sent it?
Yeah, I think it's implied. I think it's implied.
It's implied, but they never outright
No,
state it in
they
this
do
one.
say it in the
But
book. Dumbledore is the one that gave it to him.
yeah, I know. He gets a cloak of invisibility as he's investigating around the school. He finds a magic mirror that shows you your heart's greatest desire, and for Harry, it's him with his parents, and it's a really sad scene.
One thing I'm going to say again, right before that, the reason why the invisibility cloak comes in handy is because they decide they need to learn more about the Sorcerer's Stone, which Hagrid tells them about.
By accident, because he's not smart.
Right.
Should not have said that. Should not have said
Again, Robbie Coltrane kills it. Oh, I should not have said that. I shouldn't have told you that. Yeah, he tells them about that, and they can't find any information about it, and Hermione recommends that they check in the restricted section, which is restricted. The students can't go there. So at night, after hours, Harry takes the Cloak of Invisibility, goes into the library, and walks into the restricted section. Now, the restricted section is not magically locked off at all, whatsoever. That's another thing. It's like, I get that the school would have a section of the library like, you cannot read these books. I get that. But wouldn't you lock it up with magic that only Dumbledore can get through?
Yeah, they go to it multiple times through the series, and we see there is some bad shit there.
Yeah.
There's books on how to steal someone's identity, books on death magic. Why aren't these locked
And
up?
all you have to do is twist the knob, open the door, and walk inside. Even Fluffy, the Cerberus, the three-headed dog, you had to unlock it with the spell. Again, Hermione was 11. If the extent of your security is a spell that a first-year student can get through, you got some shitty security there, my guy. I get that Hermione is, like, unusually smart and would know that, but still.
And, I mean, later Harry Potter installments justify it with, oh, but Hogwarts is magically guarded, so only approved people can enter.
Right.
Fair enough, but still, why would...
From then on, Harry, after he makes some noise in the restricted section, one of the groundskeepers, Mr. Filch, who's played by, I don't remember his name, he's played by the guy who played...
played the first Doctor in... Or, he didn't. He played the first Doctor, the character. He wasn't the first Doctor.
He played Walder Frey in Game of Thrones. And Walder Frey is... I don't know... you haven't seen the show, Casey, but Walder Frey is one of the most hated villains. For good reason. He's responsible for the Red Wedding. But still, he does a great job, and after Harry makes some noise, Filch walks into the library, and trying to escape him, Harry finds his way into this room he's never seen before, and finds a magic mirror that shows your heart's greatest desire, which is his family. And again, very sweet, very heartbreaking.
Very sad.
Very sad. One thing I will say I did notice, later on he brings Ron into that exact same room, and there's a shot where they take off the cloak. After that, they run to the mirror. If you look closely in the background where they're running from, there's a green sheet lying on the ground.
Missed something. You missed... Guys, you missed something in editing.
That's how they did it. It's a very interestingly simple way of how they did that special effect. They literally just gave Harry a green sheet, and that made him invisible. And it's a green screen, essentially. And Dumbledore finds him staring at that mirror and talks with him and tells him not to go looking for this mirror ever again because it's going to be moved and it's going to be in a dangerous place. Foreshadowing!
And also, it will ruin your life.
Oh, yeah.
Because just staring into your heart's desire. Dumbledore's greatest desire is a nice pair of socks. Totally.
Yeah.
Not anything else. But anyway, after Christmas, find out Hagrid has a new baby dragon. It gets taken away because Malfoy's a narc. Yeah. They get detention in the Murder Woods, where Harry sees a monster shadow man eating a unicorn and gets saved by a centaur. Mm-hmm. And Harry finds out that, oh, by the way, at Hogwarts, there's this thing in the woods killing all the unicorns to try and heal itself because it's half dead. Also, Harry, that's Voldemort, the man who murdered your parents. Don't you love this wizarding world, Harry? Where the guy who murdered your parents is just hanging out in the woods killing things?
Yeah.
Oh, this is such a great escapist fantasy. Why are you crying, Harry?
Yeah. I will say, though, one more thing. Hagrid's dog, Fang, such a cute dog. Oh
Oh
my
yeah,
god.
he's a cute doggy. And Hagrid's other doggy, Fluffy, such a cute doggy. Cute doggies in this
Oh
movie.
yeah, Fang is a Neapolitan Mastiff. I used to have an English Mastiff, so I got a soft spot for Mastiffs.
What have I had? I've had labs mostly.
Yeah, still good dogs. Very good dogs.
All dogs are good,
Yeah.
including three-headed monster dogs. But anyway, I'm pretty sure we've said most of what happens. Harry, Ron, and Hermione figure out what's going on, that the Philosopher's Stone is being stored in the school's basement, and Voldemort is there trying to steal it. Or maybe Snape's trying to steal it for him because Snape's an asshole.
Yes.
But whatever. And they decide, well, let's just steal the stone first. And they go to break into the third floor murder pit to get the stone. Neville, the minor character, tries to stop them, and they take him out. They go through this dungeon that... Side note, I do D&D in my spare time. I'm a dungeon master. I gotta run some players through the Harry Potter dungeon and see if they notice, because it's a pretty good D&D dungeon.
They have to complete certain trials in order to get to the Sorcerer's Stone. In each one is symbolic of one of the teachers, or at least the different subjects of the school. The first one is magical creatures, which is Cerberus, the three-headed dog, Fluffy.
They've got herbology with murder plants that are weak to sunlight and fire. They have charms with flying keys you gotta grab. They have a giant chessboard, which I guess McGonagall made, that Ron sacrifices himself on because he's loyal.
Yeah, and in the books, again, I'm not comparing it to the books, but in the book, there's a lot more to it.
They cut Snape and Quirrell's, I think. Like, Quirrell's was fighting a troll. I mean, that's probably the most difficult trial, but, like, again, 11-year-olds can beat trolls, so maybe not. And Snape's was a logic puzzle, right?
Right, it was, there were a bunch of cups set up. A couple of them were poison, one of them was wine, and one of them would allow you to walk through the door in front of you. But it's very clear, at least in the books, it was very clear that someone is down there before them, so the troll is knocked out, the potion is mostly drunk, and that's when Hermione figures out that Harry has to take.
Side note, wizards, I feel like, I don't know how intentional it is, but wizards tend to be pretty stupid in the series. They are just morons. So I really like Snape's trial, and am kind of disappointed that they got rid of it, because it's the most effective trial. It's a logic puzzle. No wizard can solve them. And of course, Snape could come up with that, and that's foreshadowing that he's a half-blood, because he learned it from his non-wizard parts. But anyway, got through the dungeon. In Dungeon Boss Room, Harry finds the villain, who was totally well foreshadowed throughout this whole film, Professor Quirrell. You know, that guy who was like in 2 scenes, and you know him? Yeah, he's the bad guy.
Yeah, and that was another thing. It's, again, pretty on-the-nose foreshadowing. Whenever something bad is happening that they attribute to Snape, if you look slightly off camera or slightly to the side, Professor Quirrell was always there. Like when Harry's at the sorting ceremony and his scar starts burning, he's staring at Snape. But if you look right next to Snape, you have Quirrell turning his head to Harry. So again, that was Quirrell the whole time.
I don't think it's good foreshadowing, to be honest.
No,
I
not
think
at all.
kind of comes out of nowhere. And also, Quirrell's kind of a nothing villain in this. Quirrell isn't really that well established. But he doesn't have to, because Quirrell is actually he has a Voldemort on his head.
He takes off his turban to reveal Lord Voldemort, his face living on the backside of his head. It was Quirrell that tried to kill Harry at the Quidditch match, because again, if you look in the back, Quirrell is also staring at Harry, performing spells. Quirrell was the one drinking the unicorn's blood in the forest, and yep, here he is, that nothing villain that miraculously has the Adolf Hitler of wizards on the back of his head this entire time.
And you know, honestly, we've been describing Voldemort as Wizard Hitler and Death Eaters as Wizard Nazis. You know what's something I noticed in this? That doesn't exist in the first one. It was introduced in the second one. Voldemort's just described as being an evil dude.
They mention he has a few followers, but that's the extent of it.
That's weird that they don't get into his motives and stuff, although maybe it was best saved for the second where it was relevant. Also, another thing I noticed related to that, they say that Harry's really good at Quidditch because it's in his blood, and thinking back, that kind of goes against some of the themes of the series Harry's a little bit. Just saying.
I wanted to ask you, do you feel like Voldemort was a little shoehorned into the end of this movie? Or what's your opinion on that?
Yeah.
Because I feel like, having read the books, seen the movies, been such a fan of this franchise my entire life, like, I have vivid memories. I was, like, 6, I think, when I saw this movie. And as a kid, a long time ago, and I was just, like, blown away by it. Absolutely. But at the same time, it's like, looking back on it now, I'm like, oh, this guy you've heard so much evil stuff about, now he's a CGI head on the back of a bald dude.
Yeah, it's weird. Also, another weird thing about Voldemort in this, he is not played by Ralph Fiennes like he is in the 4th movie onward. He's a CG character who is voiced by Ian Hart, who's the guy who plays Quirrell as Quirrell.
I thought it was a little, like, out of left field that, like, oh, yeah, you know, this horrible guy you've heard so much about? Yeah, he's the one he's just here now, and he's always been around, and I thought it was a little out of left field.
I'd say the antagonist is the biggest downfall of this film in both parts of Quirrell and Voldemort. They don't get fully fleshed out enough. And the series has an on and off problem with that. It eventually gets good at villains, but yeah, it has a few clunkers early on.
And I will say about them doing the trials and getting through the dungeons to get to the Sorcerer's Stone, I do think it does do a pretty good job, although a little on the nose job, of setting up how these kids are able to do that. Like, Hermione, she knows a lot about magic. She can figure out that Devil's Snare, you have to relax, and they don't like sunlight. So she's smart and she would know that. Harry's really good at flying a broom, so he would be very, very good at finding that key and doing that trial. Ron, it's established he's really good at playing wizard's chess.
In one scene, you see him playing chess, so he does chess.
Right.
Although I
said, very on the nose, but
Ron's
still.
trial, it's kind of weird that his skill is being good at chess when Harry's is flying and Hermione's is being smart. But I do think if you reframe it as Ron succeeds his trial because he sacrifices himself and he's selfish, I think it works better.
Ron gets hurt and Hermione decides to stay with him, and Harry is the one has to go to find the Sorcerer's Stone and confront Professor Snape, whom they assume was Professor Snape, which, side note about that, they legit accuse Professor Snape of war crimes here. And they're just supposed to be like,
and there's
whatever.
little, I mean, he was casting a spell during Quidditch game. Well, actually, he was trying to do just enchantment. When do they first start suspecting Snape? I think it's before even the Quidditch game. It's when his leg gets messed up at Halloween. They're like, I bet that he's trying to steal the Sorcerer's Stone and got mauled by Fluffy. Okay, how'd you figure that out? Because no, that's not true. Also, it kind of gets the view that they think Snape is evil and trying to kill everyone just because he's a dick to them.
Like, the school is a death trap. You see, he probably could have gotten that scratch anywhere and everywhere. It does later on say that he did get it from Fluffy because he stopped Quirrell, but still, the staircases move on their own. He probably got that scratch just walking down the hallway, just something magically, like, just cut his leg, just because that's what would happen in this goddamn school. But still,
in the books, another death trap thing that's in the books, and obviously this is the movie. In the books, the school is haunted by a poltergeist who destroys shit. Again, this school is horrible.
So Harry alone gets to the final test, which is the mirror that shows you what you want. Quirrell is looking at the mirror. He knows what he wants. He wants the stone, but he can't get it. But he forces Harry to look in the mirror, to which Harry wishes that his greatest desire is to get the stone. And what later Dumbledore does tell him is that the reason why it went to him and not Quirrell is because the stone would only go to someone who wanted the stone but didn't want to use it. And that's why Harry got it.
And I will say, the trials are stupidly easy. Good on Dumbledore for making something that completely shut down Voldemort that he physically could not beat.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Although, now that I think about it, what were Harry, Hermione, and Ron even gonna do? Harry, Hermione, and Ron didn't really save the day. Voldemort would not have gotten the stone without them. He would have just been trapped in the dungeon.
He's like Indiana Jones in the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Great movie, but the hero is completely inconsequential to the actual conflict at hand. He doesn't resolve it, he's just kind of there for it.
Well, I mean, Harry does kill Voldemort, and we'll get to that in a second, but also Dumbledore can kill Voldemort when he's as weak as he is in this movie. But anyway, yeah, Voldemort tries to... Well, he has Quirrell do it because Voldemort's just ahead, but he has Quirrell try and kill Harry, and Quirrell turns to dust. And it's revealed that the reason that Dumbledore didn't kill Harry when he was a child is because love is a powerful thing, a powerful magical thing, and when Harry's mother sacrificed herself to save him, it put a magic spell on Harry that made him basically Voldemort poison, and Voldemort can't touch him without turning to dust.
But I will say, the books and the later movies do sort of give a better reason as to why that's a thing. You know, they go into how it was a combination of the love, but also the fact that Voldemort's soul was about to shatter as is.
It's a bit out of left field, the Harry's Voldemort poison because of mother's love thing. It kind of comes out of nowhere, and that's a knock against this film. But, I mean, they set it up in this one, so they are able to use it without problem in later ones, which...
Harry refuses to assist Quirrell and Voldemort in their plans, and Quirrell attacks him, and when Quirrell is choking Harry, it's revealed the reason why Quirrell wouldn't touch Harry in one of the early scenes when he met him, he wouldn't shake his hand. It's revealed that Quirrell, because Voldemort's attached to him, when he touches Harry, he will turn to dust. He touches Harry, turns to dust. Voldemort's soul, or whatever that is, rises up, attacks Harry, goes through him, and flies off into the night, never to be seen again in this film.
Give him like 3 years.
Harry gets knocked out, and he wakes up in the hospital ward with
Dumbledore,
flowers,
who gives exposition,
and informs him that there are ways that Voldemort will return in the future, but tells him that Harry saved the day, everything's all right, and it's all good. And then Harry meets up with Ron and Hermione, makes his peace with Hagrid, gets on the train, gives the line, "I'm not going home." Not really. Gets on the train rides away, and the camera pans up, the train goes away, Hagrid walks back to Hogwarts, which is in the distance, the iconic theme kicks in, and it's happily ever after.
Until the next movie. And also, you forgot the infamous part. You forgot how they resolved the house points with Gryffindor being so far behind with Dumbledore.
How could I forget that?
Last minute.
How could I forget that?
People talk about it all the time. Dumbledore last minute gives Harry and co a bunch of points for their adventures. And I'm going to rant for a minute. I don't have a problem with that scene. Because they're being graded on how good they are at wizards. And Harry, Ron, and Hermione just did a bunch of really good at wizard stuff. So yeah, they got better grades on that. Maybe Dumbledore was being melodramatic with the doing it at the last possible moment. But it isn't, as people portray, him pulling stuff out of his ass to make Gryffindor win. Harry earned that win, damn it.
He fought Voldemort, god damn it.
Well,
he deserved 60 points.
Fought is generous.
Yeah, but he deserved those 60 points, goddammit.
He survived Voldemort, goddammit.
But, and you know something? Neville got points for just being an all-around good guy.
Good on you, Neville.
Good on you. And Gryffindor won the House Cup.
So that's the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Overall thoughts on it, Riley?
I thought, from a technical perspective, except for some of the CGI and the green screen, I thought it's a very well-made movie. The production design, the music, the cinematography, the practical effects. We didn't talk about that. There's a lot of really cool practical effects
and honestly,
in this.
This film has CG. I think part of the reason it's aged so well is that it knew CG at the time wasn't so good, and it uses practical effects as much as possible. Like, for instance, the Great Hall is a real massive set that they build and use for all the movies, but it's enhanced with, like, the CG night sky, you know?
They only CGI'd the stuff they had to, like the troll.
Daniel Radcliffe hitting the ground so hard he should have died.
The full-person body doubles where they're flying in the air. The centaur that's in the movie, in the Forbidden Forest that rescues Harry from Voldemort drinking the blood. They really only CGI'd the stuff they had to, but there's a lot of really cool special effects, and that's what aged well. So from a technical perspective, save for some spotty CGI that hasn't aged well, from a technical perspective, this movie is incredibly well made. From a story perspective, the setup is very interesting, sets up a really good world, sets up a lot of really great, likable characters. The second act does meander a bit. There's a few, like you said, a bit of slice of life. Just kind of shows you some information that you know is going to be relevant throughout the story. There's a lot of exposition, a lot of on-the-nose foreshadowing. But overall, my biggest issue was it doesn't totally always feel like they're just making the best movie they can now. There's a lot of times where it feels like they are just setting up for the next movie, which is understandable. You got 7 more movies to make, but still, you gotta focus on the movie you can. But that said, I do think for the most part they did succeed. One thing that did strike me, however, right when I started watching this, and I actually looked into the rest of them, this is a lot longer movie than I thought it was going to be.
Oh god,
and
it's
from what I remember,
2.5 hours.
Yeah, all the Harry Potter movies are. They're all 2.5 hours. Yeah, and I was just like, God damn. And then granted, they're really big books, and I will say, I'm not comparing it to, we've said that a lot. Oh, I'm not comparing it to the books. But I just think it's funny. But in terms of, and I know I said I wasn't going to compare it as an adaptation. I'm not comparing it. I'm just saying it did adapt the book remarkably well, down to the smallest details. This one and the second one, Chamber of Secrets, there are really minute details that are in the books that are here, like in the sorting ceremony, when there's some characters' names who are mentioned, like, oh, you come in and you get sorted, and it's like, they're just nothing characters, they're background characters that you're never going to see again. Those are the exact names of characters that are mentioned in the books. Like, when McGonagall says for this girl to come up, that's the name she used in the book. Point of what I'm saying is, save for a couple minute details and one chapter in particular that cut out some details.
Yeah, the first
cut
chapter,
out one chapter.
The first chapter in the book is actually really weird. It's just all from Vernon Dursley's perspective of, there's a lot of like birds and weird people around my house, and it's like before Harry's even dropped off. I'm glad they start with the Dumbledore.
Yeah, they shortened that scene up. The only full chapter in the book that they got rid of for the movie, I'm glad they got rid of. It was like Malfoy at one point challenges Harry to a wizarding duel at midnight.
Oh god, I forgot about that.
Yeah, and they go there, but Malfoy's not there, and Filch walks in, so it kind of just serves the purpose of setting up the fact that Malfoy is out for Harry and Hermione and Ron. He's trying to get them in trouble, and you didn't really need to do that. When he actually got him in trouble at Hagrid's hut, that's really all you needed. Which, another thing I'd like to mention, love Hagrid. As I've said multiple times, Robbie Coltrane did such a great job.
Yeah, this is the Hagrid heaviest movie, and
absolutely,
he's good in it.
Hagrid probably should have gotten punished for this. I'm just saying. He's housing kids after hours in his hut, introducing them to dragons.
I mean, they took away his baby. They took away his baby dragon. Isn't that punishment enough, man?
True. Yeah, that's true. But still, I don't know, I just think it's funny. Like, Hagrid does a lot of stuff that he shouldn't. He's letting them know information that he shouldn't. It's after hours, and he's letting them into his hut and talking with them, and it's, I don't know, I just thought it was funny. I'm glad he didn't get quote-unquote punished, except for getting Norbert taken away, but I don't know, I just thought it was interesting. I'm like, Hagrid probably should have had some consequences coming from this, but he didn't, but whatever. Another thing that this movie I thought was a little strange, the Sorcerer's Stone, the title of this film, isn't even mentioned by name until 98 minutes in.
Oh yeah. Also, interesting thing, because of the title change, they re-filmed every scene where they say Philosopher's Stone so that there's a version where they say Sorcerer's Stone, and that's so weird.
I mean, gotta make it for different audiences, I guess. Another thing I'd like to mention is this and another film franchise were revolutionary to this particular genre of cinema. Harry Potter and The Lord of the Rings. Both of the first films in those series came out 2001, and they revolutionized the fantasy genre in mainstream cinema. Because up to that point, there were sci-fi movies, there was action movies, there was coming-of-age stories, there was all that, but fantasy was just sort of hokey, cheesy, campy, just B-movies, you know? It was a combination of Harry Potter, The Sorcerer's Stone, and Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, in 2001 that invigorated people's love of fantasy, also reinvigorated Hollywood's interest in adapting fantasy stories. So that, I think that's something that needs to be taken into consideration, just the sheer impact this story had on not just people, but on cinema as well.
My thoughts on this film, I'm reminded of the trope changeling fantasy, which this film is an example of. It's an often mocked story cliche of discovering you're part of another world and it's fantastic and interesting and you go off in it and leave your life behind. And it is cliche and it is overdone and has problems with it, which the series analyzes a bit more in later installments, although not as fully. But anyway, yes, it's cliche, but it's so popular for a reason. It's a very good story framework for children's media. This movie creates a fantasy world that the audience can believe that is wonderful and dares them to imagine it. And I think that is why this movie is so impactful and is its greatest strength. There are some good performances, some bad. The effects were good for their time but haven't aged as well. The story has some good moments, but also some really dumb stuff we can mock. But overall, I think, as a whole, this film succeeds because it's a fantasy. And I don't just mean because it has magic and stuff. It creates a world to dream about. And for a children's movie, that is very powerful and very entertaining. And I love this movie as a kid, and that's why I think it's a success. It is a great children's movie.
And it's a movie that kids can enjoy to this day. A lot of people enjoy this. Adults enjoy this.
Yeah, although
as we mentioned earlier,
a lot of adults who enjoy Harry Potter kind of cringed, not gonna lie.
Yeah. Again, this has a huge fandom. We mentioned that earlier. It has such a huge fandom, but as comes with fandoms, as I believe we've discussed previously, a lot of fandoms are really toxic. But again, this movie had such a big impact on pop culture, on cinema, and overall, I do think this is a really solid movie, and it's a really solid first step into this 8-part series that is the Harry Potter film franchise.
Riley, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone?
This film has a very enjoyable setup. The second act, although it meanders a little bit, it's still entertaining. It's very sweet, endearing, and heartwarming. There's a lot of stuff to make fun of, but that's part of the enjoyment. I'm going to give this one the same grade I gave the last 2 movies we reviewed. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I feel like we're starting to get a theme, because I think I'm going to... I'm actually kind of torn on what to give this movie. I think I'm going to be lenient because it's a kid's movie. I'm going to give it an 8.5.
Okay.
Repeat from last week's scores.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll have a repeat next week, but who knows?
I was about to mention that, actually. I was going to allude to it, but we'll get into it later.
So yeah, Harry Potter and the whatever's the whatever. Riley, where can they find you?
You can all find me on TikTok, Instagram, at Riley James Thorpe. You can find me on YouTube at Riley Thorpe, where I have my most recent short film, Pizza Face, still on there. It's a horror slasher comedy about a serial killer with really bad acne. And so it'd be much appreciated if you could check that out.
Also, check out The First Mag Train Out of Cleveland and Other Short Stories, available on Amazon. It's a collection of sci-fi short stories I wrote. You can find me on Twitter at JARMESCASEY, Jarms Casey. Next week, we are not doing a discussion because we're changing our schedule up. We'll talk about more next week. But next week, we are going to be watching Riccio The Story of Ricky, which is perhaps the best martial arts movie I've ever seen.
It's a Hong Kong adaptation of a manga from the 90s, and trust me, we're not going to be repeating scores this time.
Oh god, that film is utter insanity, and I love it. But anyway, as always, I'm Casey Jarms.
And I am Riley Thorpe.
We'll be back next week, assuming we don't get eaten by Fluffy. And hey, it's just a movie. Don't lose your head to it, especially not to a ladder.